Mary Nelson. There's a movie on the TV in the beginning. It was called A Guy Named Joe, which became Always. And Stephen had us over to his house, and he wanted us to write a remake of that. And we talked about ghost stories all night. And by the time we left, he said he wanted to make a ghost story. So we called back and said we'd rather do that. And he wanted to do it contemporary, so we set it in the suburbs, which made it different. And I guess for pop culture, there are a lot of things that which I've forgotten about, were first in movies like that. A family smoking pot.
Are you all surprised that here we are 25 years later, and you have nearly a full house coming to commemorate the anniversary of this film, that it has become such a classic and is so beloved?
Some of us are very surprised that we're alive.
When I was walking out, I was with James, and I was thinking, it really holds up. I haven't seen it. By the way, I want to really thank the sponsors, because I haven't seen this on a big screen in 25 years.
I have to say it was very fortuitous that the American Cinematheque got such a great print. I mean, we're so lucky, and when you think the DVD and even the Laserdisc transfers of this are so mediocre, so to see it on the big screen in such great shape, it really reminds you of what a powerful film it is and how great it looked. And I mean, as you say, it really holds up, and I think that's a product of the acting and the writing and the directing. So kudos to everybody for this. Zelda, how did you first get involved in such a unique and memorable role? And I think it's shown up on a few AFI lists and things like that.
Well, I'm not even sure. I don't know who my competition was. I was screen tested 4 times before I was permitted to essay the role. And if I had not been given the role, you would find me out on Santa Monica Boulevard under some street lamp, emoting. And I'm just so glad that, I was permitted to be in a movie that is a classic. It handed me a really wonderful career. I want to explain one thing. I am in a wheelchair, and it is temporary. I recently broke my pelvis in a bad fall, and while I heal, I'm taking advantage of modern technology.
James, you're a big fan of the genre, a founding member of the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror. I wonder...
Dr. Reed.
And Dr. Reed, of course, an old friend of the late Dr. and wonderful Dr. Reed. I wonder, is it more of a kick? Is it something special when you do a film like this that's in the genre, or is just any chance to do what you love equally exciting? Or is there a little extra something when you're in a film that has a genre element to it?
Well, especially when it's done well. I've been in a few that I would gladly... Nothing ever written by you. But it's special. I know this is a particularly grand experience. And one other, Return of the Living Dead, the first one, was really done in a very creative way for very little money. But this was especially nice because we made friends, really some lifetime friends. Craig has been a good friend all these years. And of course, that one over there, temporarily in the wheelchair, she's a neighbor. And I just think the picture just looks magnificent.
It does, and it's a shame that Matthew Leonetti couldn't be here because he was the DP and he did a beautiful job shooting that one.
By the way, he's one of the best. And also, he's been in more movies than I've seen. He was also in Nerds, weren't you?
One of the
Well, if we went through James Cameron's filmography, we'd be here a very long time tonight. I mean, just watching All the President's Men again, even, you know, you have a brief, memorable role in that.
Well, I have to tell you how that happened. We were up seeing an uncle of mine doing King Lear up at Stratford, and we had a lot to drink. Got back, and we got back about 3 o'clock in the morning, and we lived in New York at the time, and Albert and I were just getting into bed. I said, I better listen to the message machine. And I said, please call. You've got whatever time you get in, call this number in Washington. So I called it, and it was the casting director for All the President's Men, and they had shot that scene 2 or 3 days before, and they didn't like it. And Jason Robards said, well, I know a guy, get him down, he'll do it. And Jason and I have worked together all our lives, and so...
That means they drank together a lot.
Yes, we did. Want to see a liver? But at any rate, I said, why don't you just go to bed? They said, take the first shuttle. So I got on the 6 o'clock shuttle to Washington. Alba was in bed, and they were in a big hurry to shoot it. They were just sneaking it in on the schedule, or off schedule, I guess. And they gave me a haircut, and haircut of the period, and we shot the scene in one take. And they said, that's it, great, that's great. So I got on the shuttle around 11, and I was home around 1, and Alba was still sleeping. And she looked up and said, didn't work out, huh?
Let me ask you, this is the same summer as E.T., and in a way this is almost the antithesis, but at the same time you still have the pop culture, you have suburbia, but this is sort of the evil version. And I wonder how much, when you were developing it with Stephen, E.T. became both Night Terrors, which was the project that was abandoned, that in a way seemed to have inspired E.T. and Poltergeist.
E.T.'s from a different cloth. We spent our time thinking about what would scare you, you know, as a little kid, things, trees out the window, clowns, you know, toys in your bedroom, lights at night, and you have human reactions to them, you know, and family reactions to them. What I remember most about E.T. is it came out the same weekend and probably, you know, prevented me from owning this theater. But E.T. was, you know, a brilliant work that just captured, you know, the entire marketplace. But the suburbia theme was probably for the first time done in a horror film, and also done in an alien movie.
Did they think that the Poltergeist would be the big hit and E.T. was smaller? Was there any sense of that?
Stephen was worried that E.T. would not be a hit at all. As a matter of fact, one studio had passed on it. So
those executives are at the unemployment office today.
They passed on E.T., and it wasn't discussed very much. It was a very small movie coming out. I think when they came out, MGM was releasing Rocky III at the same time. So we were in about 800 theaters. Rocky III was in 1,400, and I think E.T. was in, I don't know, 1,400 or 1,500 theaters. But yes, I think initially Stephen thought Poltergeist would be a bigger hit.
Well, you know, it's interesting because we talked a little bit about, and this whole festival this week is devoted to the films of 1982. And I wonder, you touched a little on the development process, why films, well, I'll say it, were better then? And I mean, something like Poltergeist, it takes the time to develop the characters. I don't think you would have the attachment to Carol Ann, to the family, if you hadn't got to know them. Now, I think they want the Poltergeist in the teaser, you know, and did you have more luxury? How were things different then?
Well, right now, there's sort of a sprint on the movie. I agree with you. You're not allowed to develop characters the same way. I think a lot of people, when they talk to me about Poltergeist and it being scary, they probably forget how much humor is in it, and the family reactions, and the love of the family, and that takes time and patience to get out. Otherwise, you see a lot of the movies now, they're, it's scare to scare to terror without a lot of breathing. So I agree with your analysis.
I think it's so great, Joe Bett's reaction when the chair starts to move, and not of fear, but of just absolute delight. It's an original idea.
Well, and she was terrific, by the way, and one of
beautiful, isn't she beautiful?
Yeah.
She still is, she's very beautiful.
One of the other things that makes it work is, at the time, Craig and Joe Beth they weren't, celebrity stars, so he accepted them as real family human beings in the movie, and so the acting on a movie like that always feels more real to me. Everybody in it felt very real in what they were doing,
Zelda, there's one.
especially you.
That was a different thing.
They say never work with kids and pets, but you worked with Heather O'Rourke, the late Heather O'Rourke, and she's wonderful in the film, and so's the dog, by the way. So, I wonder if you can tell us the
Direction of the dog. The dog really took direction.
Can you tell us a little bit about not only working with Heather, but also working with, in this case, special effects? For another question for Jimmy as well, which is, when you're not looking at something, you're not seeing something, and ILM's coming in and post and putting all this stuff in, is it liberating because you can imagine whatever, or is it more difficult when you don't know what's going to be there ultimately?
It didn't bother me because there were no special effects on the set. I only worked 6 days. I went in, I kept my mouth shut, my ears open, and learned. It was a major learning experience for me. I had never had a chance to develop a character before. I loved knowing Heather. She was a very honest, little, desperately sophisticated child. She passed away when she had just turned 12. But about 2 nights before she died, she phoned me and said, "Let's do lunch." And I was so utterly blown away by what she had learned, and her gentleness, her physical beauty, and the fact that she had, in my mind, she lacked good parenting. That's the way it is, folks.
I'm amazed to hear that you only work 6 days because your role resonates so strongly, and to think that you only work 6 days on the film.
I only worked 6 days. I thought I'd only get 60% of my 2-week salary. I was so naive. It was very early in my career. It handed me a career. I've worked constantly since then, except for a couple of years that were noticeably dry, and that was because I had elected to essay the role of mother in an AIDS education campaign, and I really felt the damage from other people, namely casting directors, feeling that if they brought me in for anything, they'd be outing themselves. Now that may sound weird, but that's what happened, folks. I had a couple of very lean years, and if I had to, I'd do it over again. We have another day.
I wish Jason and I knew that you were dry. We would have taken care of the dry years,
Oh, honey, I've been dry since 1980. I'll cook with it, but I won't drink it.
You asked about the
Visual effects.
the visual effects. I remember very specifically when the house was to be swallowed up. Although I didn't know what it was, and I said to Toby and to Stephen, I said, "Well, what am I looking at?" I mean, it was just a blue light, a flashing light, and they said, "Well, we don't really know yet." But they said, think of the worst thing that you have ever looked at in your life and used that as a sense memory? And I thought it was something during the war, and it worked for me.
Good answer. Mark, you worked on the first sequel, and I wonder what you can tell me about the challenge. I mean, this is a pretty close-ended movie. The TV goes out the door, and we think the story's over. When MGM or Amblin came to you and said, we want to do a sequel, the movie was very successful, what was your initial response, and how do you feel the sequel worked for you in terms of continuing the story?
We picked up the storyline, I think, pretty well with the evil from the other side being attracted to Carol Ann, Heather, so that when the family moved, the presence would return for her. So I was happy with the storyline. What I wasn't happy with was the ending was much softer than I expected, and frankly, the special effects company and the director were in an endless squabble, and they wound up not getting the final effects sequence on the screen. MGM was also in a difficult financial position during the sequel. But sequels are difficult because audiences' expectations are not for the same movie. They expect everything topped to some degree. So you've got to push, everything gets pushed a little more than it probably should.
Was Richard Edlund on the second one?
Yes, Richard was, and its effects were terrific, especially. The movie was nominated for, I think, several Academy Awards in the effects area, and also Jerry Goldsmith's score was nominated for an Academy Award. And one of the unusual things about the score, if you notice, is it's done like a love ballad. The theme for Carol Ann, it's all mild, and it's not really, it's not threatening the way normal horror films are. He was brilliant.
What happened to the young boy? Did he stay in the business?
Oliver went, I believe he went on to film school and was trying to direct.
He's awfully good at it. And by the way, we talked about the wonderful Beatrice Straight.
An incredible performer.
Yeah, when you think about Beatrice Straight getting winning the Oscar for about 30 Seconds of Network, which she's great in, but she's so good in this movie that this is a movie you could easily have seen her getting recognition in a much more substantial role, and she's terrific in the film. Do you want to talk a little bit about working with Beatrice?
I love working with Beatrice. I think she's a phenomenal woman, an amazing performer, a very good Democrat. She was one of the political forces in the cast. I wasn't very political then, sort of seeds were planted, but now. Anyway, I love working with Beatrice. I feel very honored that I had an opportunity, brief as it was, to work with her. She's a grand, grand lady, and I hope she's leader of the band in heaven.
It's interesting Beatrice was actually a very good friend of my wife, Albert and Jessica. And I've known Beatrice since 1939 or 40, when she was just back from England. And Beatrice lost a daughter in real life, and so this was, as I'm sure you know, and so it was very, very close to her, to the idea of losing a child. Sensational for her.
The life after life themes and a lot of the content was based on, we did a lot of research. It wasn't as much part of the popular culture then, in terms of, you know, the moments of when JoBeth describes the feelings from the stomach and, you know, sensing somebody's presence. And one comment I would like to make is, one of the, I think Zelda would tell you this, but one of the gifts for the kids in Zelda was the caliber of actors around everybody. on this, where, I mean, everybody is so professional and so good at their craft that, you know, when you've got people who can come out and get a scene done in one take or two takes, that's the kind of environment you need to be in, you know, to learn.
Yeah, the first scene in the picture shot, the first scene that was shot was the first very day, was Craig and myself walking up the hill. And it was interesting because we had never met before. By the end of that day, we were very close friends from then on, because there was something about that day. It was very exciting. The crew was, they had all met that day. Everybody just met that day. And it was a good day's work. We really had a great day's work.
Craig's a lot of fun. I don't know if a lot of you know this, but before he did this, he did stand-up comedy with Gary Levinson, was his partner.
Didn't know that. Mark, let me ask you, obviously the television is the focus of all evil in this film. Is there a message to take from that, or just...
Well, the message is a little obvious, but now that I have TiVo, well, you know, at that time, you know, they used to say TV would dummy you down.
25 years ago?
I think I was the first generation with a TV set and one of the earliest TV addicts around, so don't do as I do.
There has been rumblings, I'm not surprised that we're making this. I wonder, is that anything that you would be involved with, or you've heard anything about, or is it just like every other film that made money at some point in the past where people are talking about remaking it?
Well, you hear that once in a while, but it's an odd situation because MGM was bought and sold with the library sold off so many times that I think Warner Brothers owns the first Poltergeist, and I think Turner somebody else owns Poltergeist 2, and I don't know who owns Poltergeist 3. But
what's left of MGM owns Poltergeist 3.
Yeah, I think one of the sequel ideas was always the house, when it disappears dimensionally, would land someplace else in a different form. The idea for the opening, and as a land developer, you'll probably be there.
It better get made fast. Don't wait.
Well, I would probably be remiss not to ask this, and you're welcome not to answer. I mean, I think when The Thing from Another World was being made, Christian Nyby was credited as director, but everyone knows that it shows the hallmarks of Howard Hawks. There's been much talk over the year of Steven Spielberg's involvement and influence over the movie. I wonder if you want to address that in relation to what Toby did, and if even after 25 years it's something you don't want to talk about, that's fine too.
Are you looking at me or the actors?
I'll say,
Cheers,
this is always comes up, and I don't fault you for bringing it up, but my answer is, Stephen was the producer, a very strong producer, who was on that set every day, and Toby Hooper, as the director, was on that set every day, and it's Toby Hooper's name up there, it's Toby Hooper Film, and I think people should just accept that. We had a great producer and a great director.
My reality was a little strange in the fact that when they started shooting the movie, as a member of the Writers Guild, we were on strike. And while I was walking on a picket line outside, they were shooting the movie inside, and I was going, okay, keep shooting, keep shooting. But I did get to spend a couple days on the set, and I think it's like James said, I'd see a take, and Toby would, call out the scene and set it up and way to go, and Stephen would come in and make some comments, and so,
which is not unusual.
No, not at all.
It happens all the time.
Great, well, there you have the answer to the definitive question. Oh, sorry, Zelda, go ahead.
I have a bit of a different view. During those 6 days that I worked, I found that Toby set up every shot and Stephen came in and made final adjustments. So I think it's a split decision.
Sweetheart, that's what we said.
I found, not to particularly disagree with you, Jimmy, but I found that Stephen had a stronger hand than you've alluded to. I think for the most part, although Toby is the nominal director, that's a Steven Spielberg movie.
Well, you've been friends for 25 years, so let's leave it at that. Before, I think we have time for one or two questions from the audience.
She'll never work in this town.
Dry years are coming again.
Other countries.
One of the things you also need to remember is Stephen got to cut the movie at the end of the day as the producer. So a lot of the movie is made in post-production as well as, on the set. But what I saw were two people, following their vision, and Stephen was part of the writing, so his vision was pretty strong as well.
Well, it definitely isn't an argument for the auteur theory, which is great, because we have a wonderful writer, a great cast. It was a wonderful collaboration between a lot of people. So let's, any questions before we wrap things up and move on to Creepshow? Or did we manage to cover all the ground? Yes, way in the back.
All right. I wanted you guys to actually talk about the paranormal or type of mystery that surrounded the film, especially with what happened after with Heather Rook and some of the other actors. I mean, I know there's a big old story about it. I don't know what your...
The question is there a poltergeist curse?
Yes, exactly.
Okay, I'll take it.
I'll follow you.
It's called Poltergeist 3. Jerry Sherman's not here. Right?
Yeah. I don't think, I'm not one to, sit around and believe in curses. This is one of the situations where, in sort of a mathematically inordinate amount of people associated with all the films passed away, Dominique Dunn, Heather, young people as well as, older people. Brian Gibson, the director of the second film, Will Sampson, Julian Beck, is brilliant. And so, in that sense, it's pretty weird. I can tell you this, on the second movie, there was a scene of underground with a lot of cadavers and bodies, and some of the cadavers were actually are real, taken that are given to science labs, and some weren't. And on that one day of shooting, the first day on that set, all the footage came out black, dark. We couldn't see anything. It was the only day that it ever happened, and that's a big disaster when it costs $50,000 to $100,000 a day for shooting. And Will Sampson, who had in his world a shaman background, asked if he could come in and cleanse the set. And being a producer on the second one, I just said, why not? And he came in at about 3 or 4 in the morning when nobody was there. This is something he asked to do. So, strange things. I'm not one to believe in it because I'm here.
Any final questions? Yeah.
Did you guys feel when you were making this movie that it would be something that held up so well and is considered a genre classic?
For myself, because as I mentioned, I was part of that strike. The first time I actually saw the full completed movie was at the premiere, and I was shocked, and I went through all the emotions that any of you would go through. There's moments with Joe Beth where you feel like crying, and I was frightened, and the production was beyond my expectations, because you write things like, like say, like James was talking about, it's the scariest thing you've ever seen pops out of the closet. Well, I don't know what that's gonna look like either. You know, that the design team and everyone else, they would have, the monster was a broom, that they would literally hold up and say, look here. So, I thought, and it's too bad Frank Marshall's not here, I thought the production was brilliant.
And Frank actually did want to come, by the way. He is about to start a new picture, and he was trying to work out a schedule, and I think he had to leave to start pre-production.
You could talk to him and you ask him if there's anything in it for Zelda and me.
Well, on behalf of Geek Monthly and the American Cinematheque, I really want to thank Zelda and James Karen, Mark Victor for coming down. This was a great Q&A. 1982 was a great year for movies. Poltergeist was a huge part of that, and we really appreciate you being here. Stay tuned for Creep Show after this bathroom break.